This Hindi bhajan, the meaning is, my mind sings your name and my eyes have tears of love for you. Ever since I am near you, I forgot the rest of the world. You are my soulmate and only refuge. My boat is stranded in the middle of middle stream. O Sri Ramakrishna, take me ashore. You are the bestower of liberation for suffering beings. गाए मन नाम तुम्हारा, गाए मन नाम तुम्हारा, नैनों में है प्रेम धारा, नैनों में है प्रेम धारा, गाए मन नाम तुम्हारा, गाए मन नाम तुम्हारा, लागी तुमसे ही लगन, भूला मैंने जगत सारा, लागी तुमसे ही लगन, भूला मैंने जगत सारा, हो प्राण सखा तुम ही मेरा हो सहारा, तुम हो मेरे प्राण सखा, तुम ही मेरा हो सहारा, गाए ये मन नाम तुम्हारा, गाए ये मन नाम तुम्हारा, नैनों में है प्रेम धारा, नैनों में है प्रेम धारा, गाए मन नाम तुम्हारा, तैया मझ धार फंसी है, राम कृष्ण पार करो तुम, नैया मझ धार फंसी है, राम कृष्ण पार करो तुम, दुखियों के दाता स्वामी सबका बेड़ा पार करो तुम, दुखियों के दाता स्वामी सबका बेड़ा पार करो तुम, गाए मन नाम तुम्हारा, गाए मन नाम तुम्हारा, नैनों में है प्रेम धारा, नैनों में है प्रेम
I'm reading from the book Go Forward, Letters of Swami Atmajnananda Maharaj, a disciple of Holy Mother. This letter is written to Swami Swahananda Maharaj. The letter is dated, it was written to Swami Swahananda when he was in Sargachi. Letter is dated 22nd May 1940. Dear Vipadbhanjan, Sri Ramakrishna said, once you have tasted sugar candy, you will no longer care for ordinary molasses. We are satisfied by enjoying the sights, sounds, tastes, etc. of this gross world through the five senses. But we have forgotten the taste of that eternal bliss which we enjoy through our own self. As long as we cannot experience a little of that bliss of the self, it is impossible to give up molasses. As you go on thinking about the divine form and qualities of Thakur, that is Sri Ramakrishna, and as you meditate on the unconditional love and affection of Holy Mother and the extraordinary life of Swamiji, if only for a short time, the door will open and you will have a momentary glimpse of that infinite ocean of peace. Only then will you feel a strong urge for God realization. We do various types of work for the sake of liberation, but none of these activities, including worship of the Lord, charity and religious preaching, provides the means for getting out of this world. Rather, these only make us hold on to the world more firmly. One who wants to become free from the world doesn't look back. If I want to raise a single morsel of this world to my mouth, I have to accept the entire world. If there are many things on a tray and I want only one thing from that tray, then the entire tray is necessary. That is why the Lord says, Dukkheshva anudvigna mana. The illumined sage is undisturbed in suffering. Both the good and the bad of this world have to be given up if we want Him who is beyond this world. Because of our past impressions from innumerable lifetimes, we cannot suddenly give up the world. So we try to give things up one by one. But it takes a long time for us to reach Him by that method. To renounce the world means to be indifferent to the world and to remain absorbed in the thought of Him. What is the use of giving up one's home and sitting on the bank of the Ganga? It is better to engage ourselves in thinking of Him as much as we can while we are at home. Unless we are absorbed in His thought, unless we have the desire to give up this world, we shall try to hang on to it on the pretext of fulfilling various duties. That is why thoughts of ethics and politics arise in the mind. But one who wants Him knows that there is no other means than sarva dharma parityajya. The verse says, give up all dharmas and take refuge in me alone. Bhagavad Gita. And fix your mind on me, place your intellect in me. Our job is to go forward, to seek the company of those who have already gone forward, and to leave behind those who are overcome by doubts, to tear asunder the net of bondage and break free swiftly, leaping over the gutters and ditches of spiritual obstacles. Our main mantra is go forward. Thakur said, go forward, in his story of the brahmachari and the woodcutter. Move forward, and no sorrow will remain. Forget all the suffering of the past, says the Bengali song. we have forgotten the taste of the rasa, the divine bliss of Brahman, which has assumed a human form. The memory of his words, his songs, his love and affection, his wonderful mannerisms, and his divine life and activities is still vividly alive throughout India. Yes.
Period of short meditation.
We are very fortunate to have Swami Atmajnananda ji as our guest speaker today. Swami Atmajnananda ji is a monk of the Ramakrishna order. Before joining the order, he earned PhD in Indian philosophy from University of Pennsylvania. He joined the Ramakrishna order in 1981 at the Vedanta Society of Southern California. Took the first vows of Brahmacharya in India in 1992 and Sannyasa in 1996. Since 1997, the Swami is resident monk in charge of the Vedanta Center of Greater Washington, D.C. He is a scholar in Indian philosophy and has traveled throughout the world and more extensively throughout India and Bangladesh. Swamiji has contributed various articles and translations to some of the books and magazines of the Ramakrishna order. One of his articles was published in Living Wisdom. He also authored Jiva Goswami's Tattva Sandarbha, a study on the philosophical development of the Gaudiya Vaishnava movement, published by Motilal Banarsi Das in 1986 under his pre-monastic name. This is Swamiji's third visit to Toronto, and last time he visited was in 2009. And today he's going to give a talk on a very unique topic, be attached. We often hear of be non-attached, be detached in spiritual life, but be attached as a spiritual practice. Very eager to listen to the Swami Atmajnananda Ji Maharaj.
It's very nice to be here after a number of years. I'm very grateful to Swamiji for the invitation. Very grateful to all of the devotees. I've received royal treatment since I've been here. I probably gained 5 pounds already. And I'm delighted to see the new shrine, the altar and everything. It really looks so beautiful. It's a tremendous atmosphere created here, seeing all of this. So, and I carefully gone through all of the plans for the renovation and everything, and it'll be fantastic. I really hope and pray through Thakur's grace, Mother's grace, that the work will be completed within a fairly reasonable length of time, and that I'll get invited for the opening. So as Swamiji said, of course, the title is a little surprising to many people. Some of you may have thought that it was a typo, that it should be detached, and attached, or that it's just an attention grabber. In a sense, it is, but it's really, the whole purpose of this is to make us re-examine our understanding of these concepts of attachment and detachment. And by the way, that reading that we had was just perfect. It'll fit in very nicely with some of the remarks that I have to make today. We may also think that be attached means be attached to God, and that be detached to the world. That, of course, is true to a certain extent. But we'll see that attachment has a role to play in every aspect of life. Spiritual life, worldly life, family life, social life, family, work life, and everything, if we know how to do it. So there are certain footnotes to this idea of be attached. Of course, it doesn't mean be attached in such a way that it creates bondage. But there should be a way to engage ourselves in spiritual life and every aspect of life that will make life more fulfilling for us and will not lead to greater bondage, will lead to greater freedom. So I chose this particular topic so that we can really question our understanding of attachment and detachment and some of the misconceptions that we have. Because very often we hear that we have to be unattached. Any type of attachment is bad. And this is too strong. We'll see that very often what we call detachment is really a type of fear of getting trapped in this world. And it is based on a kind of timid attitude, something that Sri Ramakrishna didn't like at all. So we'll take a look at this and try to see to what extent we need to have a little bit of attachment in the sense of really being fully engaged in life. When we have our goals, we have our aspirations, even for career, not just the spiritual life, all of that. There's a certain extent to which a little fear of attachment can hold us down from boldly pursuing whatever dreams we have, whatever aspirations we have. And on the other hand, sometimes these dreams can be a source of bondage for us. So we have to know the very fine balance between attachment and detachment. One thing we'll see is that there's no very simple and easy formula that all attachment is bad, all detachment is good. There are certain times when detachment is a sign of death, is a sign of tamas, a sign of laziness, a sign of fear of failure. Sometimes we'll try to tell ourselves that we want to be detached from everything, but really we're afraid that if we attempt something that we won't be able to be successful at it. sometimes we need this passion. With passion be successful in every field of life, spiritual life, worldly life, any field. So we need this passion, but we have to make sure that it's the type that doesn't lead to more bondage, that it's not based on selfish motives, that it's not based on this feeling of I and mine, that is free from this taint of Maya, we can say. So really it's a type of attachment. We may prefer the term engagement, but it's a type of zest for life that we need, that we see in the lives of Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother, and especially Swamiji. They all could have stayed in caves and not get involved in anything, but this is the beauty of especially Swamiji's vision of spiritual life and monastic life in our order, that is full of a type of engagement and attachment to the world. But this type of attachment is not a selfish, personal type of attachment. I want to start by looking at some of the traditional ideas regarding attachment and detachment, especially as taught by Sri Ramakrishna, because of course it's a main theme that we have in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, where he looks upon attachment to God as one of the key elements. We had this beautiful image about this need to taste sugar candy in order to lose our taste for simple molasses. So this was always his emphasis. He always emphasized this positive side. So there's a very positive element to this idea of attachment. And again, not just in spiritual life, in all aspects of life, tempered with the type of spiritual maturity. So this is, of course, the very important aspect to it, that we have to have a deeper understanding of our true nature so that this ego doesn't get in the way, because this ego is really the main problem that we have in spiritual life. So I want to start by analyzing different pairs of concepts that we have, very important concepts. The first pair will be Vairagya and Anuraga. And Vairagya, this is often considered to be one of the great prerequisites in spiritual life, and very often translated as renunciation, but really I think dispassion is probably a little closer to the actual meaning of that. So we have this dispassion and then Anuraga, passion. So this will be that passion in terms of a deep love for our spiritual ideal. So we'll have these two. Then, two other very important concepts, nivritti and pravritti. These we find it very early in the Vedantic tradition, this idea of engagement and disengagement, letting the mind go outward, keeping the mind inward. So we have these two ideas, and then the last pair will be Daya and Maya. This is something very special to Sri Ramakrishna. He emphasized this idea that Maya is the attachment we have to our near and dear ones, to our own family members, children, parents, all of that, or even people from our locality, from our community, from our own group, whatever it is. And Daya is that same feeling, but expanded. That same love that we have for our near and dear ones, that we have for everyone. So this will be that third pairing that we have. We'll go through Vairagya, Anuraga, then Nivritti, Pravritti, and then Maya and Daya. So this Vairagya and Anuraga, we can hear from the sound of these two words that they have this similar raga in them. And it's very interesting, the etymology of all of this. It comes from a Sanskrit root, ranj, to be colored or to be dyed, with the implication of redness. So something that's dyed the color red. So this red is always associated with the guna of rajas, which means passion. So, and even if the word rakta, blood, comes from the same root, and the blood is always also associated with passion because the blood rushes to the face, and we turn a little bit reddish like that. So we have all of these associations. The word raga also comes from the same root, rani, so it has a huge range of meanings. Raga, everything from love and really deep passion for other people in a very positive sense, to anger and perhaps even rage. And I don't know, maybe the English word rage and the Sanskrit word raga are connected. I never. It'd be interesting. Everyone has these phones nowadays, right? They can just ask the phone, type something in, or they cognate. They maybe cognate words. Anyhow, the reason why I find it so interesting, this is dyeing and everything, is because Sri Ramakrishna gives the illustration of dyeing cloth in a vat of liquid, and it's very, very helpful in understanding this whole concept of dyeing the mind in a certain idea, comparing it to dipping cloth in a vat of dye. So we find this repeated several times in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. Now, before I get to that, this idea of raga, if we add the preverb vi to it, the prefix vi, then it means that we're separated from that. So we're free from this passion. It also means we're free from that love. So we get rid of one, we get rid of the other. So that's why I say dispassion is a very nice way of understanding this. And there's anuraga. This will be passion for something else, in accordance with something else. It'll be the highest type of love, is the way we end up explaining that. Now, Sri Ramakrishna says that the mind is like a white cloth that is freshly laundered, that's come back from the laundry, and that this mind can be dipped, and it will take whatever color we dip it into. So just as whatever color is in the vat of dye, if it's blue, it will turn out blue. If it's red, it will turn out red. This is the nature of the mind, he says. So this will prove to be a very helpful illustration for us when we go through this Vairagya and Anuraga. Now this Vairagya is considered to be a great prerequisite in spiritual life. We have to have a certain amount of dispassion for the world. If we're tremendously attached to the world, then it's very difficult to keep the mind fixed on anything higher than that. The pull of the world will be tremendously strong for us. So this vairagya, this tremendous dispassion, is considered very important in spiritual life, especially monastic life. And those who have this feeling of great dispassion for the world are the ones who will ultimately renounce the world. So this vairagya was practiced in such a way that it meant really turning away from the world. And in the monastic sense, that no wife, no husband, no children, no job, no career, anything like that. The mind would be fully immersed in this pursuit of realization, God realization or self-realization. But for devotees also, there's this need to cultivate a spirit of detachment, mental renunciation. Sri Ramakrishna praises this very much. Actually, in Gita, this idea of mental renunciation is so strong that we read in the beginning of chapter 6 that the real sannyasi is the one with mental renunciation. And the one who simply takes on the orange cloth but is attached to whatever, even attached to spiritual things, is not even considered a sannyasi. The real sannyasi is the one who has that spirit of renunciation. So this is important for everyone, to free the mind from this binding power of desire, of ego, of name and fame, and allowing it to go deep into the spiritual ideal. This vairagya is considered to be especially important at the time of meditation. When Arjuna complains to Sri Krishna that his mind refuses to get quiet at the time of meditation, he tells him two things. One is abhyasa. That means that you keep trying. The mind wanders away, you keep bringing it back. It wanders away, and you keep bringing it back. Now, we know that if this is the only thing that we try to do, that it won't work. So the second thing is you have to have this vairagya, he tells me. Because unless we have some dispassion, then the pull of the world will be too strong. No matter how much willpower we have, no matter how many times we try to take the mind from worldly thought and bring it back, if the pull is so strong there, we'll lose each time. So this vairagya, we have to have a little bit of this dispassion in order for this abhyasa, for this practice to be helpful. So this is considered to be the second element of control of the mind, this vairagya and this abhyasa. But Sri Ramakrishna says that even vairagya is not enough. And if you go through the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, you'll see almost every time he talks about dispassion, he talks about passion. Almost every time he talks about vairagya, he talks about anuraga. Because we cannot develop dispassion for the world without replacing it with something that is more valuable to us, and that's the sugar candy. And the world is like the molasses, the example that we heard in the beginning. So this is that second element that is added to this vairagya and anuraga. So when we add this anu to it, then that means that the mind gets dyed in accordance with something else. And one of the best examples that we have is that of Holy Mother. There's a beautiful line in the hymn that was written by Swami Atmajnananda. It's Prakari Paramam, where it says Tadbhava Ranjita Akaram. This Ranjita. So again we have this dyeing. So Akara, her whole being was dyed in the mood of Sri Ramakrishna, in the being of Sri Ramakrishna, in the essence of Sri Ramakrishna. She thought about him so much, with such intensity, that she practically was possessed by him. There's one particular example of this in her life that's very, very interesting. After Sri Ramakrishna passed away, she went on pilgrimage to Vrindavan, and several of the direct disciples were with her, Swami Yogananda, Swami Vedananda, Martu Maharaj, I think, and then other householders, devotees were there. And one day she went into a very deep type of samadhi, you can say. And when the mind came down from it, they noticed that she wasn't her normal self, as if she had become Sri Ramakrishna. And in that mood, ecstatic mood, they put different questions to her, Swami Yogananda, and she answered them exactly the way he used to answer. Other times she was too shy even to talk in front of people, men especially, but she answered exactly the same way. They gave her the pan, chewing this pan. Thakur had a certain way of biting off the corner of it and putting it in a certain side. She did it exactly the way he did it. And they all noticed this. And this mood remained with her for some time. So he writes that her very being had become infused, dyed in the color of Sri Ramakrishna at that time. So this is the way to make this vairagya a very easy, natural thing. Sri Ramakrishna didn't stress that, give up anything. He just replace it. You want to avoid going to the east, then start going to the west. It's very simple, it's a very straightforward type of teaching. So we find that this is the easiest way to practice this vairagya is by dyeing the mind in something that will replace it, that will lead us higher in a spiritual way, that will really change the whole color of the mind. This is what we're trying to do, this transformation process. Now, how do we do this? There are three factors that are very important in dyeing cloth. When we become sadhus, we learn a little bit about dyeing cloth. And nowadays we can buy this pre-colored fabric, but in the early days we had to take this mud from the Ganges and then mix it with water and then dye it that way. So we become experts at dying. So there are three factors that we all learn very quickly. One is that the dye has to be a certain intensity. If it's too watery, if you don't put enough of color in it, then your cloth won't turn very dark. It'll be very light. Then, if you have it dark enough, but you just dip it in and pull it out, you don't give it time. You have to let it sit for a while in order for it to take the color. Then, the third thing is the condition of the cloth itself. If you start with cloth that, say a brand new cloth and it has starch in it, you have to wash out the starch first. Or if it's older, you have to make sure that it's not stained, you have to clean it and everything. It has to be clean and dry. And then when you dip it in and you leave it in and the dye is strong enough, you'll come out and have nicely dyed cloth. So these are the three elements that we have. The intensity of the solution, that means that the intensity of thought that we have when we practice our meditation or other spiritual practices, the length of time we allow ourselves, the length of time we keep the cloth there, that means that we have to devote a little time to our spiritual practice, and the condition of the cloth itself, that means the condition of the mind. So the first part, this intensity, means intensity of desire, that longing, vyakulata. Sri Ramakrishna loved this term, that as if we're gasping for a breath of air. If we don't realize God, this life will go. There's a tremendous longing, like the boy whose head is pushed underwater by the guru, and he's gasping for a breath of air. And he says, I felt as if my life would go. I couldn't live another second without a breath of air. That type of intensity, that type of longing for God, is the first element that we have. Now, we can say, well, it sounds very nice, but how do we do it? How do we get that intense longing for God? Sri Ramakrishna gives us a formula. He gives us many different things. And if we go through his teachings, we find that perhaps the one that we hear most often is holy company. And it's easy. This is the easiest. It's not sitting for long hours in meditation or anything. If we're fortunate enough to get the company of those who have this anuraga, who have this intense love for God, who have this great longing for God, who have tasted the joy of realization, or at least are greatly advanced in spiritual life, we catch it. We catch something directly from them. We get that longing. He was asked one time, Sri Ramakrishna, what's the value of holy company? And his answer was, it begets longing for God. Because once we see that, this is what happens, this transformation happens, if someone devotes an entire life to God realization, that this is the type of joy we see in their faces, then we want it. If we don't see it, we just read about it in books, it won't mean too much to us. So this is a tremendous value to holy company. And as I say, he almost always puts this first on the list. And second on the list, very often, is solitude. Because in solitude, there are no distractions from the world. We can really dive deep. We don't worry about what anybody else thinks. We can feel ourselves to be who we really are. In the company of other people, we're always feeling that they're looking at us from outside, that they're objectifying us, they see us as a physical person, as a body and everything. When we're alone, we can forget all of that. We don't care what we look like, or we wear nice clothes, anything like that. We can feel ourselves to be pure spirit at that time. And we can go very deep and without any of the distractions that we have. So Sri Ramakrishna always said, spend some time in solitude. And it doesn't matter if it's 6 months, or if it's one day, or if it's an hour, or even within the home to have a private place that we go, no one else is there. We sit quietly for meditation. That's also our solitude. Then, Shoran Manan is Smarana Manana, this constant recollection, remembrance of God, which we can do throughout the day. So we haven't even gotten to meditation yet. These are other things that are relatively simple things. This constant remembrance, how do we do it? We go into some homes of devotees, we see only pictures of Thakur, Swami, direct disciples, or Durga, Krishna, whatever. We only see their pictures on the wall. Every time they open their eyes and look around, they're reminded. So there are wonderful ways of doing this spiritual reading. I was telling the other night that for me, reading the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna is the greatest holy company, is the greatest inspiration. It gives us the greatest, very deep, subtle understanding of spiritual truths, and it allows the mind to get fixed in this idea of lila, this divine play, so that we're not simply getting instructions and teachings and everything. We're also impressing on the mind these beautiful images, because M was a genius at painting scenes. He was a genius at telling us exactly who was sitting where and what time of day it was, even the position of the stars, and is it Ganges flowing north or south? We know everything from that. So he paints a beautiful picture for us. And this brings me to the next one, is pilgrimage. When we actually go to these places and we allow the mind to directly experience that, and while we're sitting there, we go to Sri Ramakrishna's room, we envision everything that took place there. This was M's contribution to us, not only to the writing of the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, but in his teachings. Many went to him, many young men went to him who later became monks of the order. And this was one of his great teachings, that you go to Dakshineswar, go to Balabhata, go to these holy places, and let the image of these places, let it be etched very deeply within your heart, so when you sit for meditation, you can recreate that scene. And was he had a very great sensitivity to associations and different things. There's a very beautiful scene in the Gospel where a branch had fallen near the Panchavati, and he was walking with Sri Ramakrishna, and Thakur pointed it out to him. He said, "Yes, I know." He said, I took a twig from that branch and I keep it in my room at home. So he said, "Why?" He said, "I look at it, it reminds me of this place and of you, and it makes me feel happy." So the association, the mind is very prone to association. So if we go on pilgrimage to holy places, this is also something that's very, very helpful to us. We can just recreate scenes for meditation. We can picture Thakur worshipping Holy Mother, Shodasi Pujita. We can go to Jainabhati, picture Mother sitting there and cutting vegetables and everything for her devotee children and everything. So it's very, very helpful to us. And then, when we sit for meditation, we're going on pilgrimage. The Ram Prasad liked this idea. Many of his songs will end with this Ghore Boshi Tirthakari. Yeah, sitting here in my room, I'm going on pilgrimage, because he would also create these scenes in his mind. So this is that intensity factor. Then we have extensity factor. There's time factor, and this is something that, of course, is not available to everyone. Nowadays, our lives are so busy and rushed that it's hard to devote so much time, but the more time we can give to spiritual life, the better. Holy Mother very often was asked by her disciples, "Why don't we see Thakur?" As if it's such an easy thing, but anyhow. And she always gave the same answer: "My child, how much japa do you do? How much time do you spend in meditation? Do 10,000, she would say. Do 10, and it takes hours to do even 10,000. Right? It'll take a long time. So her point was that if this is something that's really important to you, you'll devote time to it. And there's another very nice Bengali song that says, "Oh Mother, I find time to do everything, but I find no time to call on you." Yeah. So we have to give a certain amount of time, a lot sometime, and a very regular special period of time. Early morning is best. And this is the one time that nobody can say it's not available. Of course, we may be tired through the day, and they have certain disadvantages, but that's the nicest time of day, early morning. Other people are sleeping. There's no bad vibrations floating around in the air. When people are sleeping, they're all immersed in Brahman, even wicked people. So it's a very nice time. Nature is very quiet and peaceful and everything. And this is the time when the dye can take. We give the mind enough time to be soaked in this dye of Sri Ramakrishna, Holy Mother, or whatever our spiritual ideal is. Now, what about this third factor? This is the tricky one. If we think that the mind has to be perfectly pure before we can dye it in the liquid, then we'll never do it. The whole lifetime will be spent trying to purify the heart and purify the mind. Now, Sri Ramakrishna, he tells us a very nice thing here. We get a big break. Here he says that he compares the mind to already freshly laundered cloth that will take whatever color. That means that we don't have to perfect ourselves first. Of course, we have to have a certain amount of purity, and we have to do everything to increase that. But the best way to purify the mind is to dip it in the dye. So this dye of this divine dye has it's a double agent. It works two ways. It's cleansing the cloth at the same time that it's dyeing the cloth. So really the best way to purify the mind and purify the heart is by immersing the mind in the thought of God. So this is a very helpful thing. Otherwise, if we think that this mind is too impure, I shouldn't even bother trying to do any spiritual practice or anything like that, then this is exactly when we should do it. And this is the greatest help to us in spiritual life. So we have this double action agent, this spiritual dye, that also purifies the mind. Now let's move to this pravritti and nivritti, another classic pair of complementary concepts that we find in Vedanta. Pravritti means something that's spinning outward. Nivritti means something that's going inward. And generally we find this pravritti has a rather negative connotation. That it means that somebody has a very outgoing mind, that they're not really interested in going deep within. They get too involved in the world, they get bound up in the world. We have that idea. And nivritti, this nivritti marga, is that path of renunciation, detachment, going deep within, trying to find that reality deep within the heart. So this pravritti has this negative connotation, and nivritti very positive connotation. So in a sense, this pravritti is going outward. This will be a little bit like this anuraga, and nivritti will be a little bit like vairagya. So they'll kind of go hand in hand. But we'll find that this distinction is not such a hard and fast type of distinction. It gets very much blurred, especially when we get to Bhagavad Gita. This Gita is a fascinating text. We think of it very often as the essence of the Upanishads. Very often it'll be Veda Vedanta, Sangraha Saraswati, the essence of all of the teachings that we find there. But it's a transitional text also, and a revolutionary text. I already mentioned how it completely changes this whole idea of sannyasa. And we'll see also this idea simply that engagement in the world is bad and disengagement is good. We'll find the exact opposite here, partly because Arjuna is a warrior and he has a role to play in everything, and it's meant for householders as well as sannyasis and everything. But we'll find here this very nice blending of these two. The instruction that Sri Krishna gives to Arjuna is Yudhyasva Vigada Dvara. So this fight that means engage. That means pravritti. That means engage in the world, engage in life. Be bold that way. But this Vegata Jvara, this fever of attachment that we have, it's a fever. This ego gets bound and everything gets tied up in there, and we have all desires that we want to get this, we want to get that. That you have to give up, that part of it. So we have these two together with a very calm mind, acting as an instrument, without any concern about name and fame, even without concern about whether you win or lose. It's hard to imagine someone telling a soldier going into battle, try to be detached even whether you win or lose. Keep the mind even that way. But fight, do the best you can so that you will win. So all of this has to be done, this engagement in the spirit of detachment. Now, this is fine for the householder. What about for the monk? Swami Atmajnananda, he says, yes, even for the monk. And this is why the monks of our order are engaged in the world. Why we work in hospitals and orphanages and do relief work and everything, because he understood that just because we take this cloth doesn't mean we're any different from anybody else. We still have that same need to purify the heart through this karma yoga, and we still have our same attachments and our same ego, and this dedicated service, engagement. Pravriti done with the spirit of detachment and spirit of love is the best way for everyone to purify the heart. Not just householder, monastic distinction is really overblown. There are many householders who have much more devotion and vairagya, and there are many more sadhus who have big egos and attachment. So no one should think that just because one wears a certain colored cloth that they have any great advantage in spiritual life. So this is why Swamiji really was a great genius. He knew these young boys that were coming. They also needed this karma yoga, but done as worship. Done as worship, seeing God dwelling within everyone. Now Maya and Daya, this will be our third set of pairs. This distinction between attachment and detachment, we'll see, will get further blurred here, and we'll find that one actually gets expanded into the other. The antidote for excessive attachment, in this case, is not that we eliminate it or remove it, but that we expand it. This is a very beautiful idea that Maya means that we're attached, but only attached to those that we identify with, those that we have some special care for, our very own people. It can be anything. It can be a clan, it can be a tribe. Generally it'll be, of course, family members. We have some special love and attachment for those that are so near and dear to our hearts. It's a very natural thing. And Sri Ramakrishna says there's nothing wrong with it. It's not that this type of Maya is bad, only there's some bondage to it. If it were a bad thing, he would say then just get rid of it. But he doesn't say get rid of it. He said take that same feeling of attachment, that same love that you feel for all of your near and dear ones, and try to feel that same thing for everyone. Let that be a universal thing. Then you're changing Maya, which is based on some type of delusion. You're taking that and you're turning it into Daya, which is a universal type of love. There's a very beautiful conversation that took place between Swami Atmajnananda and this Robert Ingersoll. Robert Ingersoll was a lecturer at the time that Swamiji came, and he was well known for being an agnostic. And he used to say that he wanted to squeeze the orange of the world to get all of the juice out of it. That means to enjoy everything. So this whole idea of giving up thing, that didn't make any sense to him. Why renounce anything, give up? We have one life to live, let's get as much enjoyment out of it as possible. So Swamiji said to him, I also believe in squeezing the orange, but I have a better way of squeezing the orange. And he said, you see, I have no wife, no children, so I can love everyone equally. I can love everyone equally. And then he went on with some other things, and then he said, this way, learn to squeeze the orange this way. You can squeeze the orange dry. You can get every drop of juice out of it that way. So this is that transition from Maya to Daya. So we've seen so far that there's kind of this old idea, the classic idea, that Vairagya is something that is a very high ideal for us, dispassion or renunciation, and connected to, coupled with nivritti, disengagement, withdrawal from the world. And both of these were associated with monastic life. This is the traditional sadhu who went from place to place. We can say Totapuri, for fear of attachment, he wouldn't stay in any one place more than 3 days. Of course, he stayed 11 months in Dakshindeshwar, but other than that, that was his traditional, very traditional sadhu type of life. Now, Sri Ramakrishna, he didn't deny the usefulness of some of this, especially in the beginning of spiritual life. And he definitely wanted his future monastic disciples to be cautious about mixing with the world too much. We know that. And he constantly warned them of the dangers of the bad associations and things, of things that would arouse lust and greed in them. But he didn't want them to turn away from the world. He didn't want them to hate the world. One of his young disciples was having a conversation with him. And Sri Ramakrishna said to him, tell me who you love. And he said, I don't love anyone. And he said, such a dry fellow. He didn't like that attitude. And then the same disciple was talking about how he didn't like the company of women. So Sri Ramakrishna said, yes, but don't hate them. If you hate them, then the mind will be attached to it. See the Divine Mother in them. So he had a different attitude, a different way of looking at all of these things. So Thakur did not like this idea of the dry sadhu, always afraid of the world, a very timid type of thing, fear of attachment. He used to say many times, I prayed to the Mother, Mother, don't make me a dry sadhu. This was his prayer. There's a very nice section, and we actually read it the other night. This is Sri Ramakrishna talking to Pandit Shashata. He said, the rishis of old had timid natures. They were easily frightened. Do you know their attitude? It was this: let me somehow get my own salvation. Who cares for others? A hollow piece of driftwood somehow manages to float, but it sinks even if a bird sits on it. But Narada and sages of his kind are like a huge log that not only can float across to the other shore, but can carry many animals and other creatures across. Teachers like Narada belong to the class of the Vijnani. They were much more courageous than the other rishis. They are like an expert satranja player. You must have noticed, it's a dice game, you must have noticed how he shouts as he throws the dice. What do I want? 6? No, 5. Here is 5. And every time he throws the dice, he gets the number he wants. He is such a clever player. So for Sri Ramakrishna, and certainly for Swamiji, we know that his perfect renunciation did not mean nifriti, did not mean disengagement from the world. This fleeing of life out of fear that, the suffering, everything is suffering, that we don't want to get involved and get attached. And then what happens, this person leaves or dies or something, we'll be miserable and everything. He gave us a better formula, we can say, and he gave different examples and different techniques. The one that probably was his favorite, and it works best for many people, is to live in the world like a maid servant in a rich man's house. This was something that he spoke about many, many times. So this is engagement, this is pravriti, without attachment. The maid servant, she loves the children there. She thinks of them as her own children, treats them the same way. She'll take them out for a walk, she'll nurse them, there'll be others go and they'll say, how was your Hari today? My Hari is a naughty boy today. what about the house? Yes, our house is looking very nice. We have the furniture, all of this. But she knows it's not her house. She knows it's not her children. And not only that, she has her own house. She has her own husband. She has her own children in the village. She only comes to work during the week that way. So he said, live in the world like that. You all have your own husband, your own wife, your own children and everything. Love them as if they belong to you, as if they were your very own, but know deep in your heart that they don't belong to you. How many days do we have? This life on this earth is a very short thing. Those that we consider our very own, they weren't around before, they won't be around afterwards. So he liked this attitude very much, that we act as if they belong to us. There's an eternal relationship, but we know deep down the only eternal relationship we have is with God. We have our own village someplace else. That means that in reality, God is our real home. That's our real home. So this is one technique. The other one we saw before, this Maya and Daya, that we expand. So we have our attachments. So we don't try to get rid of them, but we try to feel that everyone is our own. We try to feel this oneness with everyone. The tendency of the mind, of course, is the direction. If we, and Thakur gives these illustrations, if we hear that there's some tragedy someplace, some earthquake took place somewhere, we say, oh, where was it? And we say, oh, it was in India. We say, oh, India. And all of a sudden we start to think, oh, I hope it wasn't somewhere where I have family members or anything. Where in India? Oh, in Gujarat. We had that huge earthquake in Gujarat. So if someone is from there, they say, oh my God. There, what part of Gujarat? Then you say, oh, in this town, it was really bad. They say, oh, my people are from that town. And then there's horrible. And Thakur says even that someone will faint, they'll hear something like that. Now, is it less of a tragedy if it took place, say in Africa or South America, someplace we don't know? Is it less of a tragedy? Are they not human beings? Is it not the same suffering and everything? But in the nature of the mind is that we have our special attachments like that. So there's one technique to lessen our special attachment is to spread it out, is to feel that, yes, we're all equally children of God, we're all equally members of the human race, the same divinity within each and every one of us, that we have that connection, that same sutratman, that same thread, divine thread, is tying all of us together regardless of where we came from, what our language is, what our religion is, anything like that. Now, suppose we develop this ability to suffer along with the suffering of the whole world. Is it not a horrible thing? Well, can we imagine the type of misery and suffering? In one sense, yes. And though only a great soul can do that and feel that. Swamiji was unique that way. If he heard about the suffering anywhere, it would affect him the same way. Sometimes he would think about how much misery there is in the world, and the whole night he would stay awake. If he couldn't sleep, he would feel that tremendous suffering. But we'll see that the type of attachment that Swamiji had and Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother is very different. In another way, we can say that because it's based not on Maya, but on Daya, that this sharing in the suffering and joy of the whole world is a type of ecstatic experience, this feeling of oneness, even though that suffering element is there, that would be a very exalting and liberating type of experience if we really felt one with all of humanity, even suffering humanity. And of course this was the essence of Swamiji, that ability to identify with the suffering humanity. That was God for him. The Ridra Narayana, the special manifestation of God in those who were poor and suffering and exploited and everything. So that was a tremendous thing about Swamiji. Now, the last technique, we can say, that Sri Ramakrishna used to talk about. Suppose the others don't work. Suppose a mother has a child and she says, well, there's no way I'm not going to think of this child as my own child. Impossible. We had a case like that. There's one devotee, he had a little daughter named Radha, and she was growing up so sweet and so cute, and he came to me and said, I'm afraid I'm getting attached to her. I said, Baba, who will not get attached to her? And you should. This is your daughter. Yeah. So suppose that doesn't work. And suppose impossible to say, well, I'll never love somebody else's daughter the same way I love my own daughter. So that also doesn't work, that expansion to Daya. So what does Thakur say? He said, yeah, then have that love, have that attachment, increase it, but see God dwelling within the child. Think that you're serving baby Gopala, whatever your spiritual attitude is. So there's a very nice teaching. We find that one of Sri Ramakrishna's disciples, it was a very wonderful couple. They had no children, so they raised a nephew. And the wife became so attached to this nephew that she said, even sitting for meditation, only the idea of the nephew comes to my mind. What can I do? So Thakur said, yes, do it. Serve that nephew. Meditate on that nephew. Feel that this is the divine Lord in the form of that nephew. Baby Gopala like that. And believe it or not, she experienced very high states of ekstati bhava, they say, through that particular type of practice. Now I want to just do one final thought. We're getting a little late. You don't mind that? Another few minutes. Okay. When we feel that there's no hope for us, that all of these things don't work, that we're attached, that we have this type of attachment, this type of bondage to the world, that there's not too much we can do about it, we can reflect on what I want to call the attachment that Sri Ramakrishna had, that Holy Mother had, and that Swamiji had. Now it may sound very funny to say that they had attachment, but they had attachment. They were highly, greatly attached. Of course, in a very different way. A way that didn't involve any type of bondage for them, of course. But still, close enough to what we call attachment that we can identify with it. Now, I'm going to start with Swamiji. Swamiji, first of all, tremendously attached to his mother. We rarely see such a devotion to a mother as Swamiji had. Even a monk is supposed to, who was mother to a monk, who was father to a monk. But he had such love and reverence for his mother that even to the very end of his life, his only worry was who will look after her. He made special arrangements with the Maharaja of Khetri to give a certain amount of money every month. His last final desire was to take his mother on pilgrimage. He took her to East Bengal and Assam and different places like that. So tremendously attached to his mother, had great love for her. When he was a boy, he used to say that after his mother took her bath in the morning, that she would come out, they would have a little bowl of water, and mother would dip her toe into that water, and they would sip from that water. Charanamrita of his own mother, that way. There's such tremendous devotion to his mother, that way. Then, look at those who renounced everything for him from the West, Goodwin and Captain Savior. How when they died, how it pained him, it hurt him so much. When Goodwin died, he was just beside himself. Somebody said to him, "Oh, Swamiji, it must have been God's will that Goodwin died." So then Swamiji said, "If it was God's will, then is it not my duty and my responsibility to fight and kill such a God for taking my Goodwin?" Imagine how much love he had for him and how pained he was when Goodwin died. Goodwin did so much for him, taking down all of his pictures and everything, leaving his home, coming to India and everything. Now we know, of course, that this was all the surface. Swamiji was so identified with the self within that none of this really could touch him. But he had a very tender human heart. He had both. This is why we love all of them so much. They were all so human that way. Now, Holy Mother, her attachment to Ratu, of course, was legendary. And we feel, of course, that there was some trick with all of that. After Sri Ramakrishna passed away, she really didn't want to live anymore. She had no incentive to remain in the world, to do anything. She was so distraught. And then Ratu came, and she had that vision, and Sri Ramakrishna told her, this will be your Yogamaya, this will keep your mind down to the world. So that attachment had some special purpose, we can say. But how attached she was to her own disciples, her monastic disciples, how distraught she was. Many of them passed away before she did. Swamiji, of course, Swami Yogananda, Swami Niranjananda, Swami Prema, so many of them, and each one was so painful for her. So Holy Mother had that type of attachment to the very pure soul monastic disciples. Now, Sri Ramakrishna, his attachment was far greater than any other. He's so attached to Narendra and some of the others that if he didn't see them, he would just be beside himself. One time he was so anxious to see Purna that they were all surprised to see, oh, what is this? Where's Purna? Where's Purna? And everything. So Sri Ramakrishna said that you have no idea, this is nothing compared to the way my heart used to pant to see Naren. He had such tremendous longing to see him. If he didn't come for a few days, then he would call for him, or he himself would go there, and even to his own embarrassment. One time we went to Brahma Samaj in the middle of a whole program that they had, and walked in the middle, just Naren, went into Samadhi. They had to turn the lights off, there was such commotion and everything, it made a great big scene. But if we look at his attachment, what was it based on? He saw God doing everything. He said, I told Naren once, I love you because I see Narayana in you. The moment I will not be able to see the Lord within you, I won't be able to even look at your face. So we see the difference there. But even when his nephew passed away, his nephew was very special to Sri Ramakrishna. His brother lost his wife in childbirth. So his child was born, so his wife died. So already he has this great grief over that. And he had some ability to see things in the future. So the Ramkumar, his brother, somehow he knew that this child wouldn't live long. So he refused to pick up the child and play with the child for fear of attachment. Same thing, for fear of attachment. This was when Sri Ramakrishna was just a young teenager living in Kamarpukur. So he practically raised this Akshay, this nephew of his. So he loved him very much. Then he grew up to be a very wonderful, handsome, intelligent young man. As soon as he was old enough, he came to Dakshineshwar as a priest there. But, as was foretold, he came down with some fever. They did everything to try to save him, and he passed away. So naturally, Sri Ramakrishna was a terrible shock to him. But he said that as he's dying there, that Vridoy is there. We saw when life left the body that Vridoy burst out in tears. But Sri Ramakrishna laughed in ecstasy. He said he saw the soul leaving just like a sword being pulled out of the sheath, untouched and completely unharmed. He said untouched and unharmed. But that was the first day. Then he says, but the next day I was standing on the porch outside my room, and you know what I felt? I felt as though a wet towel were being wrung inside my heart. That was how I suffered for Akshay. Oh, Mother, I thought, this body of mine has no relation even to the cloth that enfolds it. Then how can it feel so much pain for a nephew? And if I feel so much pain, what agony must the householders suffer? Is that what you were teaching me? Then he added, but you know, those who hold on to the Lord do not lose themselves in grief. Now, what do we learn from all of this? One is that Sri Ramakrishna, Holy Mother, Swamiji, that they had such tender human hearts. This is how we can identify with them so much. And Sri Ramakrishna always said, when the Lord comes in human form, that he behaves just like an ordinary human being. That caught in the snare of the five elements, want to Bodhisattva, Brahma Parikali. That Brahma weeps like an ordinary human being. So we see this combination of that perfect divinity and this perfectly human heart. But we also see how different this so-called attachment is, and how we can also learn to purify this type of attachment. That with Swamiji, it came from seeing the self dwelling equally within all beings. He had that vision, that Advaita vision. For Holy Mother, it was her ability to identify with the motherhood. She was the mother of all. Everyone was her child. And for Sri Ramakrishna, it was that constant vision of God dwelling within all beings. That was the source of attachment and attraction for him. And we also learn from this that we shouldn't feel guilty about our own attachments. We shouldn't shrink from the world out of fear. We should be a little bit bold to practice both attachment and detachment. And Swamiji's formula was, you need that power of attachment, equally you need that power of detachment. But we have to eliminate this Maya element of it, this selfish element, this ego element out of the whole thing. So I want to close by reading from a lecture that Swamiji gave, Work and its Secret. Attachment is the source of all our pleasures now. We are attached to our friends, to our relatives. We are attached to our intellectual and spiritual works. We are attached to external objects so that we get pleasure from them. What again brings misery but this very attachment? We have to detach ourselves to learn joy. If only we had the power to detach ourselves at will, there would not be any misery. That man alone will be able to get the best of nature, who, having the power of attaching himself to a thing with all his energy, has also the power to detach himself when he should do so. The difficulty is that there must be as much power of attachment as that of detachment. There are men who are never attracted by anything. They can never love. They are hard-hearted and apathetic. They escape most of the miseries of life. But the wall never feels misery. The wall never loves, is never hurt. But it is the wall after all. Surely it is better to be attached and caught than to be a wall. Therefore, the man who never loves, who is hard and stony, escaping most of the miseries of life, escapes also its joys. We do not want that. That is weakness, that is death. That soul has not been awakened, that never feels weakness and never feels misery. That is a callous state. We do not want that.